The Columbus Blue Jackets have been a team that it feels like I talk a lot about with regards to the draft pretty much every year at this point. So I hope that over the next little while they start to upswing a little bit and become more of a contender in the NHL, because they've drafted a lot of players, and this year's draft class they drafted only 6, but definitely more Columbus Blue Jackets style draft picks. So let's get into why that might be. At 14th overall, they started things off by drafting Jackson Smith. I had Jackson Smith a little bit lower than this, but I definitely see a world where he is potentially one of the best defensemen in this year's draft class, not named Matthew Schaefer. Smith brings talent out the wazoo. There is so much there to dig into with his game. He skates well, he's got skill, he's a confident offensive player at times, and I think with the right management and nurturing and ability to sort of juggle the good and the bad with him, he could turn out to be a really interesting defenseman at the NHL level. For me, the big issue was that as the year went on, watching him play with Tri-City, that fun aspect of his game, that offensive sense, kind of trailed off as time went on. He was taking more needless risks and just popping pucks on net from the middle of nowhere under pretty solid coverage, and shots would just get blocked and then he'd be chasing play back the other way. He was trying to throw hits and just missing. It was just a very strange thing to watch. I was waiting for him to become something that he just never was over the course of this season, but you still saw the potential that he could be there. I do really like this pick, and I especially like this pick because Smith is not going back to Tri-City next year, and he's going to what will likely be an absolute wagon of a hockey team with the Penn State Nittany Lions. I am really excited to see what that team looks like with him on it. I'm really excited to see what coaching can do for him there. I would be in absolutely no rush to take him out of college hockey either, so I think that your patience with him will be rewarded really greatly. I think that the talent level that he shows on the ice and the physical willingness might bait you into wanting him in the NHL a little sooner than later, but similar to a guy like a David Jiricek, I think the longer that you spend bringing him along slowly and not really rushing him along no matter how well he plays, I think he's going to turn out better in the end no matter what. Interesting player. I think he's got a long way to go to hit his ceiling, but there is something there that I really like, and at times he was in my top 10 for stretches of this season. It's just towards the end, every time I saw him, I went, it's just not there. The first couple games I saw were totally different, and I just am waiting for something that hasn't been there for months. So we'll see where it goes, but the talent floor is really strong. At 20th overall, the gasp pick of the first round, I would say, was done by the Columbus Blue Jackets, taking Podor Andreanov, the first goaltender taken in this year's draft. I love Podor Andreanov. I've been watching him all season long. For the starting parts of the year, he faced a significant workload and stopped a lot of hockey pucks over in Russian junior hockey. Yes, a lot of people pointed out rightfully that he signed a contract extension until 2030. 2030 is only 5 years away. How many goaltenders are entrenched NHL goaltenders when they're 23 in 2025? Not very many. I would argue that teams might be even over-developing their young goaltenders and keeping them out of the NHL for too long. So to me, this sounds exactly like a kid who his team in Russia really believes in, will likely be their KHL goaltender for 3 of those 5 years. And to me, a lot of Russian players seem to just not want to come over until they feel like they and the NHL team are ready for an NHL job. So for Andreanov, thinking, I would rather be in Moscow playing in the KHL, making some good money, and staying home for a while and then going to the NHL, sounds a lot better than going, okay, I'm going to be in the junior league for another year or two, then I'll go to Cleveland and play for a few years and try to earn my way into the NHL from there. One seems like a better option than the other if I'm him, so I'm not really concerned about this at all. I think in 2030, if you end up with a number 1 goaltender here, which is possible, you won't really care about the preceding 5 seasons. I think he's the best goaltender available in this draft. There were better players on the board for me, but if you want a goalie and you've already got Jackson Smith, this is a good one. Then they took Malte Voss at 76, and Don Waddell made some waves by saying he was in their top 14 this year. I don't know how that's possible, but of all of the defensemen that teams seem to just clamor over, big, safe, responsible, solid defensive skaters who are decently mobile, can make a safe pass and keep their game super simple, Malte Voss is a decent option. I would say he's one of the more projectable options available. The upside is however more skilled and quick he can get on his feet. The physical game is also solid, but could be improved. If you end up with a depth defenseman here at 76th overall, or a third pair defenseman here, which I think is possible, then you've done okay. I would have gone in a different direction, and I think that teams teams are really looking at players like Voss very, very positively when they might be a little bit overvalued like that, but he's a solid option for what he is, and it's totally fine. You've got a really solid upside defenseman in Smith, a really good goaltender in Andreanov, and a solid sort of third option in Voss here. Jumping way ahead at 160th overall, they drafted Owen Griffin. Owen Griffin is a player who had a massive playoff run with the Oshawa Generals this year. I was very interested in Owen Griffin this year. He wasn't on my list, I didn't have him ranked, but I definitely saw a solid, skilled upside pick here that really doesn't, I think, have the best chance of getting there. But if he does get to the NHL, his skill upside and the pace of play is really, really solid. Griffin, though, to me, carries a lot of the same issues that people question smaller players about, where I've seen guys bump into him and he goes flying into the corner. He's very thin for his size. I'm not very confident in the pace of play, pushing defensemen onto their heels as much as a guy like him might need to, but that's not to say he won't get there. And this screams Columbus Blue Jackets to me at this point. Smaller but high production junior player that you can stash in junior and then maybe take along slowly with pro hockey experience, and maybe you get a nice upside pick here that even if he plays 10 games at 160th overall, that's pretty solid. He may not have been the undersized scoring forward that I would have bet on here, but I definitely see the logic behind taking Owen Griffin. At 173rd, they took Hayden Rothheim, and this is a guy who I had never heard of before, so I went and watched him. I wouldn't have ranked him. There's a bit of that, I want to play that offensive puck carry first style of play, but the skating and the resilience under pressure and the skill level is just not all there. I would bet that that's what they're hoping to work around. The mindset and the offensive intensity level that he has, and you just sort of work with everything else and try to develop something better there that can play into that strength. We'll see what happens. At 173rd overall, yeah, whatever. You're not going to complain. If he turns out to be anything, then so be it. And there is an interesting offensive mindset there that maybe you could build around. And at 198th, let me know if you've heard this before, the Columbus Blue Jackets drafted a very, very high-producing junior scorer who plays in a league that definitely has been taking some hits over the years in Jeremy Lauron. Lauron is definitely a very, very skilled player. He is an active, intense, and agile guy. I think he brings some interesting upside that I think could lead him to being a solid college player, especially offensively. I'm just not sure if it's enough to be an NHL player. This to me sounds like their analytics team or something got a draft pick late in the draft and they went, let's take Lauron and see what happens. Him and Owen Griffin, I feel like, are in similar boats to one another. I would have loved to see Jeremy Lauron not in Canadian Junior A hockey this year, to see him tested against some really, really good competition. We'll get that eventually. And again, I think at 198th, Columbus is the type of team that generally will be betting on skill and upside rather than safety and size. But Lauron is a good example of what I think Columbus seems to value. If he turns out to be anything, then you have won the draft. And honestly, if I had a few people telling me that they really, really believed in the skill level and the intensity level that he has, which is there, I could get behind it at this point. So for the Columbus Blue Jackets, they're getting a 1D. I think they took some risks here, to be perfectly honest with you. Jackson Smith, I think, has a pretty low floor, but the ceiling is really, really high. I think with Podor Andreanov, you're gonna have to be patient, but I think that your patience will be rewarded. I could easily see this guy being one of the more fun, athletic goaltenders out there, especially for his age in the next few years, and in the KHL over the next while, he will play more and more, hopefully, and at the end of it, you will have an NHL-ready goaltender that you can just plop right in Columbus, and hopefully things work out from there. Malte Voss, I think there's a really low ceiling there, but a pretty solid defensive floor, and then Griffin and Lauron are really high upside swings that, again, I feel like are really low floor options, but definitely I can see the logic behind why they were guys that would be drafted that are more offensive and skilled. And Hayden Rothheim is a mystery box. He's big, he wants to play a little bit of that offensive style of hockey from the defense position. It's just not all there yet, so we'll see. I'm not sure what there is with him, but overall I think they did a really good job aiming high with a few of their picks. Even if a few of them I would have gone in a different direction, and I think there is a chance that a few of these players maybe don't hit that NHL ceiling, but they're worth betting on regardless. And with that, we're going to call it. If you liked the video, definitely like and subscribe. If you really liked it, definitely consider a subscription over at Scouching.ca, where you can get access to all kinds of fun data tools on our Discord server and plenty of other fun stuff that you're just not going to find anywhere else on the internet. So check that out at Scouching.ca. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.